Before Warriors Rockets meant Steph Curry, James Harden, switching defenses, missed threes, and entire fan bases needing blood pressure medication, it meant something much stranger. It meant the San Francisco Warriors going down to play the San Diego Rockets. Not Houston, San Diego. Not Chase Center, not Oracle, not the Summit. The San Diego Sports Arena. And on February 1st, 1968, it meant Rudy LaRusso walking into that building and playing like a man who'd been told by several different employers in several different ways that maybe his best basketball was behind him. Then he gave San Diego 40 points, 17 made field goals, 28 shots, 11 rebounds, 40 minutes, 40 points. This wasn't a young star arriving, and it wasn't the future announcing itself. This was a veteran who'd already been through Minneapolis, Los Angeles, NBA Finals heartbreak, a trade that he hated, a standoff with Detroit, and a second basketball life in San Francisco. This is the episode where Rudy LaRusso doesn't look like a former Laker, and he doesn't look like a supporting character, or a guy filling Rick Barry's empty scoring column. For one night, he looks like the whole damn offense. Welcome back to Warrior 100. I'm documenting one game per player until I reach 100. Today's player is Rudy LaRusso. Today's game is February 1st, 1968. The San Francisco Warriors at the San Diego Rockets. Warriors win it 128-114. And this one is sneaky important, because if you only know the Warriors through the modern lens, this game feels like it comes from another sport. The Warriors are still in San Francisco. The Rockets are still in San Diego. The league has 12 teams. The ABA is suddenly real enough to scare people. The three-point line exists in the other league, not this one. The box score has no steals, no blocks, no turnovers, no plus-minus, no video-friendly shot chart, and nobody saying, well, he generated rim pressure. It has field goals, free throws, rebounds, assists, fouls, points. That's it. Survive the elbows and count the buckets. And for Rudy LaRusso, the buckets were loud. The NBA in early February 1968 is in a fascinating spot. Philadelphia is the defending champion and still the biggest regular season monster in the league. Wilt Chamberlain is still doing Wilt Chamberlain things, except now, one of those things is leading the league in assists. Because apparently being the most physically impossible man alive just wasn't quite enough. The Celtics aren't dead, even though the league keeps trying to bury them. Bill Russell's team is older, but it's still Boston. That means everyone should know better than to assume the dynasty's ended until someone actually sees the body. The Lakers are still chasing the title that keeps slipping away. Jerry West and Elgin Baylor are still carrying all that talent, all that beauty, and all that bad luck. The St. Louis Hawks are still in St. Louis, not Atlanta yet, and they're very good. Lenny Wilkens, Zelmo Beatty, Richie Guerin. That team matters. And then there are two expansion clubs, Seattle and San Diego. The Supersonics and the Rockets are both newborn franchises, trying to look like NBA teams while getting smacked in the face by grown men every other night. And that's the world this game lives in. On this same night, the Knicks beat the Bulls 112-103, and St. Louis survived Seattle 113-110. The next night, Wilt would put up the only known 20-20-20 game. 22 points, 25 rebounds, 21 assists against Detroit. So LaRusso's 40 points didn't happen in a dead week. It happened in a league that was actively mutating. The Warriors came into this night with a very specific kind of problem. They were good, but not great. Good. That sounds insulting, but it isn't. In 1968, being good after losing Rick Barry, that was a real accomplishment. Barry had just led the NBA in scoring, carried the Warriors to the 1967 finals, then jumped towards the ABA's Oakland Oaks. I say towards, because basketball in the late 60s wasn't just basketball. It was contract law with jump shots. So Bill Sharman's Warriors had to rebuild the offense without their 35-point-a-night superstar. Nate Thurman's still the franchise pillar, although he doesn't appear in this box score. Jeff Mullins is becoming a major scorer. Clyde Lee gives him rebounding and interior work. Fred Hetzel, Jim King, Bob Warlick, George Lee, Al Attles. This was a real rotation. But LaRusso was the pressure valve. The Warriors needed somebody who could take grown man shots. Somebody who didn't need the game to be easy. Someone who'd already been in fights, finals, trades, and hostile buildings. By the end of this game, San Francisco is 34-22. That's not a fluke record. That's a team still trying to matter after losing its leading man. And in San Diego, LaRusso played like he wasn't interested in being a footnote. Meanwhile, San Diego is 14-40 after this loss. That's expansion basketball, not fake bad, and not tanking bad, actually, literally bad. The Rockets are in their very first season. The roster is a collection of usable players, interesting players, and future trivia answers. Don Cohis is their best scorer. Tony Kimball can rebound. Dave Camby is a veteran four. John McLaughlin is there before becoming a Milwaukee Buck. Pat Riley is a rookie, and that's pretty funny in retrospect because the future godfather of the NBA front office is just a young guard getting 24 minutes for a team losing 67 games. Jack McMahon is coaching and general managing the whole thing, and that's a brutal assignment. Expansion teams don't arrive fully formed. They arrive with some spare parts, bad matchups, and a schedule that doesn't care about your dreams. But San Diego wasn't dead in this game. They actually led after the first quarter, 34-33. They shot better from the field than the Warriors. They got 28 from Don Cohis and 26 from Dave Camby. This wasn't a 14-win team lying down. It was a 14-win team lacking enough answers. And that's the expansion experience in one sentence. The coaching matchup is better than the standings suggest. For San Francisco, it's Bill Sharman. As a player, Sharman had been one of the great shooting guards of the 1950s Celtics. As a coach, he'd eventually become one of the most important figures in Lakers history, the man associated with the morning shoot-around and the 1972 title team. He's one of those basketball lifers whose resume looks fake if you read it too quickly. For San Diego, it's Jack McMahon, who'd already coached the Cincinnati Royals and now had the job of turning an expansion team into something vaguely coherent. That's not glamorous work. That's assembly line work. That's taking a box of parts and hoping the instructions are in English. The Hall of Fame presence here is strange too. Nate Thurman's part of the Warriors world, although not in this box. Al Attles plays 13 minutes for San Francisco, but his real Warriors legacy will stretch across decades as a player, coach, executive, and institutional soul. Pat Riley plays 24 minutes for San Diego, scores 12, and at this point, he's just a rookie. Imagine watching this game live and being told, hey, that Riley kid on the expansion Rockets, he's going to become one of the defining NBA coaches and executives ever. You'd ask what was wrong with the person telling you. And Jim Barnett is on the Rockets bench here too. He scores 4 points in 15 minutes. Later, he becomes a Warrior, and then, much later, one of the great voices attached to Warriors basketball. In this game, he's just a young Rocket in a crowded box score. That's the fun of these old games. Sometimes the future standing right there, wearing the wrong uniform. So Warriors-Rockets isn't a rivalry yet. In 1968, this isn't personal. The Rockets don't even live in Houston. They're an expansion team in San Diego. The Warriors aren't the modern dynasty that we've come to love, and seems to have now sort of evaporated. They're not even Golden State yet. So the rivalry here is mostly geographic and structural. Two Western Division teams, one established and trying to stay relevant, one brand new and trying to stop leaking points. The real Warriors-Rockets rivalry comes much later. Much, much later. That's the Curry-Harden era. Playoff series, switch everything defense, threes, math, frustration, and Chris Paul's hamstring becoming a historical artifact. This is the prologue before the prologue, but that almost makes it cooler. Because on February the 1st, 1968, nobody in that building is thinking, someday these franchises are going to make each other miserable in the Western Conference playoffs. They're thinking, can anybody guard Rudy LaRusso tonight? And the answer is no, not really. Rudy LaRusso is one of those players that basketball history tends to misfile. He wasn't quite a superstar, so he gets pushed down. He wasn't just a role player, so calling him that feels lazy. He was a 5-time All-Star, a rugged defender, a major rebounder, and a legitimate scorer. He's one of the defining bruisers of the 1960s NBA. He was born in Brooklyn, went to Dartmouth, and that alone makes him a standout. He was a Brooklyn tough guy who played Ivy League ball, then walked into the NBA and decided, hey, this sport isn't physical enough yet. At Dartmouth, he was a dominant rebounder. He set school marks on the glass and built the kind of college resume that made him a second-round pick by the Minneapolis Lakers in 1959. And yes, that's Minneapolis Lakers. LaRusso's NBA story begins before the Lakers are fully Los Angeles. He joins a franchise in transition. The Lakers move west. Elgin Baylor's already brilliant. Then Jerry West arrives, and LaRusso becomes the third man in a core that keeps running into the same green wall. Boston. The Lakers of the early 1960s are both beautiful and cursed. Baylor, West, LaRusso, that should be enough to win a title in a normal universe. But they don't play in a normal universe. They played in Bill Russell's universe. LaRusso went to 4 NBA Finals with the Lakers and lost all 4 to the Celtics. That's the kind of career wound that doesn't show up in a box score. He wasn't some passenger watching Baylor and West do the work. He defended, rebounded, fouled, fought, and scored. He did the work that makes a team sturdy enough to get its heart broken. His reputation was physical. Roughhouse Rudy was not subtle branding. He was known for elbows, contact, resistance, and a general willingness to make the other forward's evening unpleasant. In the 1960s, that wasn't a personality flaw. That was a job description. Then, in January '67, the Lakers decided they were done with him. He was sent to Detroit in a complicated trade. He didn't want to go. His wife was pregnant. His life was in Southern California. He refused to report. He was suspended and fined, but he didn't move. Eventually, Detroit sold his rights to San Francisco, and the Warriors made a critical concession. LaRusso could commute from LA. That sounds crazy now, but it worked, and the timing mattered. The Warriors had just lost Rick Barry. They needed scoring, force, identity, and veteran credibility. LaRusso gave them all of it, and that's what makes the 1967-68 season so interesting. LaRusso wasn't winding down, he was leveling up offensively. Without Baylor and West absorbing the top billing, and without Barry taking over every headline in San Francisco, LaRusso suddenly had room. He averaged over 21 points per game that season. He made the All-Star team and finished as one of the league's better scorers that season. On this night in San Diego, he hit the top of that version of himself. 40 points, not in a ceremonial way or in a hot-hand bench explosion. 40 minutes, 28 shots, 11 rebounds, a first-option performance from a player that history usually remembers as the third guy. That's why this game matters. It lets Rudy LaRusso step out of the Baylor West shadow and the Rick Barry absence and become the story himself. The first quarter is the warning sign that this won't be easy for San Francisco. San Diego comes out hot and wins the quarter 34-33. For a bad team, that's oxygen. If you're the Rockets, you're at home, and you're playing one of the better teams in the West, and you've got a 1-point lead after 12 minutes, well, it ain't much. But for an expansion team, not much can feel like a full meal. The problem is the Warriors have too many ways to stabilize. In the second quarter, San Francisco wins at 32-24, and that's the real hinge of the game. The Rockets don't collapse completely, but the Warriors turn a 1-point deficit into a 7-point halftime lead. It's 65-58 at the break. That's veteran basketball. Don't panic. When in the middle of the game, make the weaker team chase you. The third quarter is where San Francisco creates separation. Another 32-point quarter. San Diego scores 25, and now it's 97-83 Warriors. That's a dangerous place for an expansion team to live. Down 14, entering the fourth, against a team with grown-up shot makers, with LaRusso cooking and enough free throw shooting to close the door. Fourth quarter's even 31-31, and that tells the story. San Diego didn't get humiliated late. They just couldn't undo the damage from the middle quarters. Warriors 128, Rockets 114. Without overcooking it, the Warriors shoot only 44.7%. San Diego outshoots them 46.6%. That's the first weird thing. The Rockets were a little bit more accurate from the floor, but San Francisco takes 114 shots to San Diego's 88 shots. That's a massive gap. Some of that, it's pace. Some of it's rebounding, some is possession pressure, and some is just texture of late 60s NBA basketball. The Warriors also make 26 free throws to San Diego's 23, and they control enough of the glass to keep giving themselves chances. LaRusso's the star, 17 for 28, 6 for 8 at the line, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 40 points. Bob Warlick gives them 20, Clyde Lee gives them 17, Fred Hetzel also scores 17, Jim King has 11. Jeff Mullins has a miserable shooting night, but he still plays 42 minutes. That's a key detail. Mullins didn't have it, and the Warriors still scored 128 because LaRusso took over the scoring burden. For San Diego, Don Cohis scores 28, Dave Gamby scores 26, Pat Riley and Toby Kimball each have 12, Art Williams has 7, John McLaughlin has 6. So the Rockets have real contributions. They just don't have the night's central player, and that's LaRusso. The subplot is replacement. Not in the cold front office sense, in the human sense. The Warriors are replacing Rick Barry's production by committee. That's not fair to anybody involved. You don't lose a 35-point score and simply hand those shots to the next guy. The entire geometry changes. Mullins has to become more. Thurman has to remain the anchor. Sharman has to coach a different team than the one that reached the finals. The role players have to live with a little more weight on every possession. And LaRusso has to prove he's not just an imported veteran from a rival franchise. He has to become a warrior. This game helps. It doesn't erase Barry. I mean, really, nothing could. But it gives San Francisco a different kind of proof. They can go on the road against a team they should beat, have Mullins shoot poorly, not have Thurman in the box, and still win by 14. Because Rudy LaRusso can give them 40. And that's not a small thing. For LaRusso personally, the subplot is even cleaner. After the Detroit standoff, and being treated like a problem to be moved, and after having to restart in San Francisco, while still living in LA, he gets to show the issue is never whether he could play. Because he could play. I mean, good grief, he could play. For the Warriors, this win is part of the bridge season. The 1966-67 seasons had Rick Barry and reached the NBA Finals. The 1967-68 Warriors don't have Barry, but they still make the playoffs and still reach the Western Division Finals before running into the Lakers. That's the story of a franchise refusing to fall apart on schedule. This game isn't their biggest win of the season. It's not a playoff game. It's not against Boston, Philly, or LA, but it's the kind of game that good teams must take. You go to a struggling expansion team, you absorb the first punch, then your veterans handle business. LaRusso's 40 was the headline, but the team meaning is bigger than one score. It says San Francisco still has professional structure, and the Warriors have enough talent to survive one weird night. It says that Sharman has players who can adapt, and in a league where the top is brutal, Philadelphia, Boston, LA, St. Louis, just staying in that second layer matters. The Warriors weren't the favorite. They were dangerous. There's a difference, and it's worth respecting. For San Diego, this is one of those expansion losses that probably felt both encouraging and a little depressing. Encouraging because they scored 114. They got real nights from Cohis and Gamby. They led after one. They didn't get blown out in the fourth. Riley gave them pretty good minutes. There are pieces here. I guess it's depressing because they still lost by 14. And that's just the expansion life. You can do a lot right and still not even be close enough. You can shoot better than the other team and still lose because you got mauled in shot volume. You can have two forwards combined for 54 and watch the other team's veteran drop 40. The Rockets' first year is mostly pain. They finish 15-67. They don't make the playoffs. I mean, obviously. They're still trying to find a franchise identity that won't fully arrive until later in another city with different stars. But the roots are here. The franchise that becomes the Houston Rockets begins as a San Diego team getting lessons like this one. Some lessons are gentle. This one is Rudy LaRusso repeatedly hitting shots until the game stops being negotiable. This game could create a new basketball fan because it explains something modern basketball sometimes hides. You don't need perfect spacing to have drama. You don't need three-point math to have pressure, and you don't need 4K replay to understand a veteran taking control. A new fan watching this game through the box score can learn the sport's older language. The pace is wild. The shot totals are enormous. The fouls pile up. Free throws matter more. Rebounds are survival. A team can shoot worse and win because it creates more attempts. A star performance isn't always about elegance. Sometimes it's about volume, endurance, and force. And the characters are absurdly good. A future legendary coach is a rookie guard for an expansion team. A future Warriors institution is sitting on the other bench. A Hall of Fame coach is managing a post-finals roster without its biggest scorer, and a rugged former Laker is reinventing himself as a first-option Warrior. That's a gateway game, not because it's famous, it isn't, but because it's dense. You pull one thread, and suddenly you get the Lakers-Celtics rivalry, Rick Barry's ABA jump, the birth of the Rockets, the Warriors' years in San Francisco, Pat Riley's playing career, and Rudy LaRusso's strange, tough, under-discussed basketball life. That's how old box scores get you. That's how it got me. They look small until they open. San Francisco finishes 43-39, third in the Western Division. In the playoffs, the Warriors beat St. Louis in the division semifinals, then get swept by the Lakers in the Western Division Finals. That sweep sounds worse than it was. The Warriors were competitive, but the Lakers were the Lakers, and San Francisco didn't have enough to get through West, Baylor, and company. Still, given the loss of Rick Barry, that's a successful season. Maybe not emotionally satisfying, but structurally impressive. The Warriors lost a scoring champion and still reached the Final Four of the NBA. LaRusso is a big reason why. San Diego finished 15-67, last in the West, no playoffs. No illusions that the first year was secretly good. It was a beginning, and beginnings are mostly ugly. The league's big story ends elsewhere. Boston rallies from a 3-1 series deficit against Philadelphia in the Eastern Division Finals, then beats the Lakers in 6 for the championship. Because, again, the Celtics weren't dead until proven otherwise, and even then, you probably needed a second opinion. Wilt wins the MVP award, Dave Bing leads the league in scoring by total points, and the league keeps expanding. The ABA keeps applying pressure, and the NBA keeps moving towards the version of itself that we recognize today. LaRusso's Warriors chapter is short, but it's not minor. He plays 2 seasons for San Francisco. In 1967-68, he gives him 21.8 points per game. The next season, he's still over 20 a night and earns all defensive second-team recognition in the very first year the NBA gives out that particular honor. And that detail matters because the award arrives late for him. If all defensive teams had existed for his whole career, LaRusso probably would have collected more of them. Instead, he gets one near the end, almost like the league finally found the correct paperwork after he'd spent a decade doing the job. His final NBA game comes in 1969. He retires at 31 years old, still productive. That's not how we expect careers to end now, but the league was different. The money was different. The travel was different. And LaRusso had other things to do. After basketball, he became an investment banker and a sports agent. He died in 2004 from Parkinson's disease. His basketball legacy is complicated mostly because he played beside louder names. Baylor and West in LA, Thurmond and Barry in the broader Warriors story, Russell's Celtics as the recurring villain, later Warriors history swallowing almost everything before 1975, and then 2015 swallowed everything again. But if you isolate Rudy LaRusso, the player's obvious. He was strong, skilled, and mean in the useful basketball sense. He was better at scoring than the shorthand remembers. He's a better defender than the awards can prove. Important on winning teams. Capable of being the best player on the floor for any given night. February 1st, 1968 is one of those nights. He spent most of his career doing the work stars need somebody else to do. Then when San Francisco needed him to be more than that, he was more than that. That's not a role player or a footnote. That's a serious professional. And this game is a useful correction. It reminds us that the history of a franchise isn't only the banners, the MVPs, the finals MVPs, and the faces everyone already knows. Sometimes it's a veteran forward in 1968 in San Diego, taking 28 shots because the team needed him to make 17 of them, and dragging a good Warriors team through a game that it had to win. Rudy LaRusso didn't own the decade, but he absolutely left his fingerprints on it. Next up, we switch sports and head back into Astro 100. Astro 39 is Gerald Young, September 14th, 1987. That one gives us a very different kind of player. Not a 40-point bruiser, not a veteran scorer. Gerald Young is speed, defense, switchblade baseball. A center fielder who could turn a routine ball in the gap into a geometry problem. So next time, we go from Rudy LaRusso hammering the San Diego Rockets to Gerald Young covering the outfield like somebody left the gate open. That's Warriors 16, Rudy LaRusso, February 1st, 1968. Warriors 128, Rockets 114. 40 points, 11 rebounds, 17 made shots. One of those games that makes a player's resume feel a little more alive. Thanks for hanging out in my sports lab, and thanks for watching.